Hi everyone, welcome back. How's it going? Thought I would do a little reading update today. It's been a few weeks since I've done one of these, so I have mostly fiction actually today. I'll be talking about, but there was one work of nonfiction I wanted to mention first. I actually just bought this book. This is called "The Last Kings of Hollywood: Coppola, Lucas, Spielberg, and the Battle for the Soul of American Cinema." So this is a brand new book, which I purchased. I'm curious to see if this book has anything new, any new revelations as far as what the author is going to say about these three important figures in cinema history. Paul Fischer is the author, who is a looks like he's a critic for different outlets, NPR, Kirkus Reviews. So yeah, curious to read this book, see what kind of research the author did, and what he has to say about these three filmmakers. So yeah, that's The Last Kings of Hollywood. First one, this is an older novel I read. The Caine Mutiny by Herman Wouk, and this book was published in the early 1950s and became a huge bestseller. Herman Wouk was served in the Navy during World War II, and clearly he brought a lot of his experiences into this novel. I'm familiar with Wouk's work, his books, The Winds of War, War and Remembrance. Remember, those were in the house growing up. I used to page through those, which are these big novels about World War II, kind of based, maybe like Tolstoy's War and Peace was a model for those books, but they are quite good. I've read The Winds of War and War and Remembrance. So if you want two really good epic novels about World War II, I liked them. They were also made in a popular miniseries back in the day in the 80s. But yeah, so I liked them. I'd never read any of Wook's other stuff, but the Caine Mutiny I read over the past few weeks. And this book was also adapted into a play as well, which I'll talk about. This book is about naval officers. The protagonist becomes an officer. This is during World War II. He becomes an officer and is assigned to a destroyer, and their mission is to go into the Pacific. They are minesweepers. The destroyer in the Pacific theater of the war. And the captain of the destroyer, Captain Queeg, is his name. And as the title suggests, there becomes a mutiny aboard this U.S. ship during wartime, and that's really the main drama of the book. I guess the main thing I liked about the book is that it really gives you a strong sense of what it was like to be in the Navy during this time. Just specifically if you were an officer, young officers going into the war, and I guess just about the bureaucracy of the Navy. A lot of these guys are college educated, and they're very critical of the bureaucracy of the Navy and the way things are done, and even critical of their commanding officers, who they find to be incompetent a lot of the time, or just mediocre. And that's a big theme in the book as well. Just the power structure in the Navy, the chain of command, and how all that works. The book gets into a lot of the boredom as well, about serving on a ship, and how there can be long stretches where nothing really happens, and you have petty rivalries that start to form on a ship, and everyone is away from their families, and kind of, I guess, not in the best mood, you might say. So it gets really into the psychology of being aboard a ship a long time, where things can get very dangerous very fast. And So yeah, and Captain Queeg, who they start to wonder about this captain's mental capacity. The big crux of the novel happens during a typhoon strikes near the ship, and they question some of Queeg's decision making during that crisis. And then a big part of the book is the trial that happens in the aftermath of this mutiny that occurs. And that's really the play. I've seen there's been a couple of movie versions of the play, including one by William Friedkin, his last film a few years ago, which was actually pretty good, which I liked. But this is the novel, which is a much bigger story about that as well. So I really liked how the book gave you a sense of day-to-day life during that time in the Navy, and the whole wartime atmosphere was all. I liked that. I think the characters in the book, though, weren't that interesting. They were just, yeah, I wasn't too drawn in with the characters. There's a love story kind of threaded through the novel as well, which is, it's okay, but it doesn't really. It does get in a sense like, how did wartime romances play out, where if a couple are seeing each other and one has to go overseas. It does kind of get into that whole idea of distance and relationships, which that was interesting to read about. But yeah, the characters I wasn't too enthralled by, and there were some really dry stretches throughout the novel, I thought as well. But yeah, overall, I can understand it's well written. Like I said, even though there are some dry stretches, but if you want to learn about life aboard a destroyer during World War II, this book would definitely be of interest to you. So, see, moving on, I started another Thomas Pynchon novel I've not read before, Against the Day. I just started this one, and this was published in 2006. This novel is starts at the end of the 19th century and goes into the early decades of the 20th century. This is, like I said, this is a big book. It's 1,000 pages or so. I just started it, just read the first few chapters, and as I said, it's very Pynchon-esque right from the beginning. We have songs, we got wacky characters, and fantastical situations. We start out at the Chicago's World's Fair in 1893 is where the book begins, and we're aboard this airship. Okay, so it kind of has this sci-fi, fantastical quality to it to start out. So I'm curious to see where this one goes. I really know nothing about the plot of the book or where it goes. I know it's highly regarded among Pynchon fans. I don't know where some rank it, but yeah, looking forward to getting through this one. And I guess Pynchon, now I was thinking about this, really you have the whole 20th century in his novels. Have really covered that whole time span now with you have this book into the 19th century, early 20th century with Against the Day. I know his new book Shadow Ticket, which came out last year, I believe, is set in the 30s. Gravity's Rainbow, of course, is set in the World War II, the 1940s. The debut novel V is set in the 50s, although there's flashbacks to earlier time periods, if I remember correctly. Crying of Lot 49 in the 60s, and then in this Inherent Vice in late 60s, early 70s, I believe. And then we have Vineland, which is set in the 80s. I've reviewed that one on an earlier video. And then there is Bleeding Edge, which was kind of set in the late 90s, early 2000s, kind of that Y2K era. So we really have the whole 20th century with Pynchon's catalog. I know there's Mason Dixon, which is set earlier 18th century. So there's that book, which maybe is read as a prequel to the rest of them. I still need to read Mason Dixon. I think I'm going to finish this one. Then I want to go to Mason Dixon and read that one. So yeah. So that's Against the Day. And finally, I've been reading some Vonnegut lately as well. And I picked this up. This was just kind of a gift to myself. I found this is the Library of America, one of the editions of Vonnegut they put out, and on here are four of his novels, including some short stories. I was going through some old files, and I had found a paper I wrote in college on the Slaughterhouse-Five, and I had almost forgotten about it, but it was kind of cool to go back and read this paper I wrote several years ago. And I thought, well, this is interesting, and I thought maybe I could expand this, or go back to, because I haven't read Vonnegut probably since then. So I thought it would be interesting, to try to expand this paper, and maybe, who knows, but I want to continue that, and hopefully write a piece on Vonnegut and get that paper revised. So I wanted to reread Slaughterhouse-Five, which is what the paper was about, and that is in this edition, and I'm reading it right now. Slaughterhouse-Five. Cat's Cradle is also in here, which I've read that one, which is an early 60s novel, which I like. God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater. I've not read that one. That's one I've not read. And then there's Breakfast of Champions. I've not read either. I've watched the movie of Breakfast of Champions. I believe in the 90s there was adapted, but I look forward to reading that one too. And then there's some short stories as well included in this book. But yeah, I'm rereading Slaughterhouse-Five. That's a short book. You can get through it in a couple days if you really apply yourself. And not to get too much talking about Slaughterhouse-Five, but it's remembered for many reasons. The protagonist, Billy Pilgrim, becomes unstuck in time, as they say, where he is jumping around all the time to different parts of his life. And the formative part of his life, where he was present as a prisoner of war at the bombing of Dresden in 1945. And coincidentally, tomorrow, February 13th, is the anniversary of the bombings of Dresden, which be 81 years ago now. And that's the central point of the book. It's really a book about trauma. Vonnegut working out that traumatic thing he went through, witnessing the bombing, and very terrifying thing. If you go read about the bombing of Dresden, it is absolutely horrifying. The firebombing of a city, and still remains really controversial. But if you're into World War II and the end of that, but that's the main part of the book. But there's also this sci-fi quality to it, where the protagonist has contact with these aliens and things like that, and then there's a lot happening in the book. But the way the book plays of narrative, I think, is really one of its, I think, innovations, you could call it, and I think there's truth to it, where if you think about it, in our exterior lives, we do live linear, right? We are stuck, all of us are stuck in linear time, but I think inside our minds, though, time is not linear. We're very non-linear, the way we look at the world, and we're always thinking about the future, or random memories are always interacting, going on inside our minds. So I think the novel really hits upon something right there. And there's just a short passage I wanted to read. This is when Billy Pilgrim is talking to one of the aliens who are studying him, and he says, "Where am I?" said Billy Pilgrim. "You're trapped in another blob of amber, Mr. Pilgrim. We are where we have to be just now, 300 million miles from Earth, bound for a time warp which will get us to Tralfamadore in hours rather than centuries." "How? How did I get here?" "It would take another Earthling to explain it to you. Earthlings are great explainers. Explaining why this event is structured as it is, telling how other events may be achieved or avoided. I am a Tralfamadorian, seeing all time as you might see a stretch of the Rocky Mountains. All time is all time. It does not change. It does not lend itself to warnings or explanations. It simply is. Take it moment by moment, and you will find that we are all, as I've said before, bugs in amber." "You sound to me as though you don't believe in free will," said Billy Pilgrim. "If I hadn't spent so much time studying Earthlings," said the Tralfamadorian, I wouldn't have any idea what was meant by free will. I visited 31 inhabited planets in the universe and have studied reports on 100 more. Only on Earth is there talk of free will. So, gives you a little sample of Vonnegut, and yeah, so I'm enjoying that, and I'm going to read these other novels. I'll definitely be going through all of these. So yeah. So I think that about wraps it up. So yeah, some Vonnegut, some Pynchon, the World War II novel, The Caine Mutiny, and a book on cinema history. So yeah, if you have any thoughts on any of these books or any of these authors, feel free to leave a comment. Yeah, so thanks for watching, and I will talk to you later.